We're here with Jaden Braves talking about the youth perspective in politics. So I want to throw back to your shirt because I want to just talk about this quickly. Yeah, I want one. It better be in the mail. So the 51st state, or do they become the 11th province? What do you think?
I got these shirts made before I went on Steve Bacon because I was under the fundamental belief that if we're going to hear something so ludicrous from down south, why don't we just match their energy? And if people are calling me out, and I'm getting thousands of comments on Instagram saying things like, that's ridiculous, nice try. But I'm like, that's not the point of the shirt. The point is, it's just as insane as the notion of us becoming the 51st state.
Yes.
And for the record, we're a larger country than the entire state combined. So the fact that we wouldn't even consider jurisdictions of different sizes of government. I mean, you already know it's not going to work out.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and say this on the show is that those people know nothing about our country. But I want to shift the gears here a little bit, and I want to talk about lowering the voting age to 16 because that's actually how I found out who you were. Was I saw you on another news program, and that came up. 16-year-olds voting, and I've always said no, but I want you to convince me otherwise.
Okay, well, let's look at the Constitution of Canada. Every citizen has the right to vote. I'm 16. I'm a citizen. Maybe I'm not a good representation of 16-year-olds in Canada, but let's take a look at one of my peers. They've finished the entirety of the public school civic education program. 50% of them, by statistic, have part-time jobs, are contributing to society, are taking public transit, are involved in their community, and under the Canadian Constitution, have the right to vote, but are excluded by this irrelevant 18-year-old number.
Okay, so the 18 to 24 demographic rarely votes. And I'm sure that that drives you nuts. Okay. It would drive me nuts, right? I worked on elections when I was 16 years old, and I was like, wow, like that demographic, they didn't vote back then. They still don't vote now. Nothing's changed. But like, how do you feel about hearing that number that like the voter turnout amongst 18 to 24-year-olds is among the lowest? And just to add a little bit of spice, they're leaning conservative.
Well, I mean, it makes sense to me. For one, conservatism has become a lot more popular in Canada. We feel disparity from the aftermarket economical effects from the pandemic, from a number of different factors, including the actions that we took during the pandemic, which were one of the best out of any country. We displace it, and it becomes conservative. That's what happens when you have a similar government for years and years on end. And I don't think that's something I should really be discussing because young people have the right to vote for whoever they want to, and I think it's great that they can express that however they feel is necessary. The other factor is, of course, it's low because there's this differentiation, there's this disconnect between when you take the course, the civic education course, which is the most failed course in the TDSB, in the entire TDSB, between when you turn 18 and that 15-year-old that you are when you take the course. And so in those years, you lose the engagement that you're supposed to have. Whereas if you started at 16, we would have people voting throughout the entire period of years because they would already be engaged. They would have the opportunity to potentially, go down to their gym and cast their ballot or have opportunities throughout high school to be involved in participatory fashion.
Mhm.
And if we had a much better civic education program, it would look different too.
Yeah.
So
But they
it's
but
the
they
fact that
they
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 don't do
don't
that
vote though. They don't vote, right?
because
So
they're not mobilized to, because there's
mm,
the disconnect after they take the course and they end up in university and it's almost not obligated to show up to the polls, which it's not in Canada. It's a right, but it's not an obligation. But if we were, allowing people to show up to the polls earlier, we were encouraging that, it would become more of an obligation and we'd see more voter participation. I know we would.
yeah. So should civics now, because this is what I said when I was your age in high school, it should be like a full year course, or it should actually be a full credited course. It should be
Wow.
probably I don't know if this is the curriculum now. I don't know that thing off by heart, but when I was in high school, it was civics and careers.
Yes, and it still is, and it's insufficient.
Okay, so yeah, that's horrid. So you think it should be a full credited thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've
Yeah.
discussed it with Jill Dunlop. I've discussed it with Stephen Lecce.
Mhm.
The government's willing to take action on that too, and I'll continue to have discussions and continue to,
Yeah.
to lobby. But nothing's going to get done because it seems like the next generation's not being considered in these decisions.
So when they decided so when you lobbied them about doing civics and they gave you financial literacy, how did you feel?
I was so confused. You know,
Yeah.
it was like when you go to mom and she says no, so you go to dad and he gives you $10 to go get lunch, but you
Mhm.
really just asked him for permission for him.
Well, here's the thing, and we're gonna have to go to a break after I say this. You'll get the first and the next one, but I always thought it was so funny, guys. I don't care how much financial literacy you try to teach people, they're going to be horrible with money in this country. They're going to be horrible with money.
Oh, come on.
Yes, they will. Yes, they will. When we come back, join us again, where he's going to be coming back with us, and we're going to be talking more about the Canadian political landscape.